Rachel Blackmon Bryars is a senior fellow at Alabama Policy Institute. And, there are op-eds and there are op-eds. But this is an oh, wow, because this is your story, right?
Thanks, Fred. Absolutely. I can't say it was easy to write and share, but it felt like the time was now and that I needed to tell it.
So this is something you were telling me before the break. So I don't know what else has been going on in the legislature, but I've been really focused on this. Georgia has their heartbeat bill, and I haven't kept track to know if that's actually gotten anywhere. And there was even a rumor that the governor might veto it. But all over the country, there are these bills like this that, as science has gotten a better handle on when there's a heartbeat and and what's life, we're beginning to define again when life begins. And it's really starting to tug on some people's hearts. So this is almost a groundswell, right? What's happening?
It is. And of course, part of it is that President Trump has appointees on the Supreme Court who have the opportunity to overturn Roe v. Wade. So part of this groundswell, as you call it, is really these state legislatures saying, if we can pass these, what some would call extreme or very restrictive abortion bans, they will be challenged by and taken up by the Supreme Court, perhaps.
So your story is, because you write it where you try to do all the right things, but you still screwed up.
That's right.
Sort of.
That's right.
Probably doesn't look like it now, but because you have a 15-year-old daughter?
She is almost 14.
Almost 14,
and,
okay.
And really, Fred, exactly. I think there's so many people who look back at themselves and say, man, I was a different person back then. And her life began when I would say I was young and foolish, and I did believe in abstinence until marriage. But Pepper, who's also a senior fellow at API, he's now my husband, of course. We screwed up, like you said, and we got pregnant. And boy, my heart absolutely shattered to see those pregnancy test results. I was 22. I was up in the Richmond, Virginia area for my first job as a TV reporter. Life looked amazing ahead of me. And here I couldn't believe what I had done. And I had to face those consequences.
So walk us through what, because as you point out in this isn't an easy decision for anybody. I mean, you go through a lot of emotions. Because you poured that out into this, and how do you relate that to what's going on in the legislature? Because, again, people are looking at paper, they're arguing over things. We have that silly, is it John Rogers? Is that who did
boy.
Oh, boy. Talk about getting some national attention. Yeah, yes. We just kill them before they're old, so we don't have to kill them later. I mean, what?
I know. And, I think
stuff.
When people hear that, and that's why I wanted to share my story, I wanted to give almost an alternate reality example of, people don't often share their stories. And sometimes now people are coming out and saying, hey, I had an abortion. I'm so glad. Look how my life turned out. I wanted to be that alternate story to say, actually, I had my baby. I can't imagine life without her. I can't believe she would have been erased from existence if I had chosen to have an abortion. I'm going to stand up and tell you that it was not easy.
This was the
hardest thing. I was notionally pro-life, and so I can't say that I just wrung my fingers and really thought about having an abortion. I pretty much knew immediately I can't have an abortion. But did it cross my mind? Did I think this is a way out? I can reverse this. I can, should I have to pay for this mistake for the rest of my life? It did cross my mind. Of course it did. But I'm so thankful that I did not. And I've gotten emails from women who have been in the same situations this past week after I've come out and told my story. And so many of them have said the same thing. I was in a terrible situation. I thought about having an abortion. Thank God I didn't. My child is my world. And some of these are single mothers. Some of these are in really hard situations that I'm so grateful. I have a husband. My story has turned out really well. And it's not
5 kids.
I've got 5 kids, my friend.
Good Lord.
Look, did I think I'd even be a mother? I didn't. But I'm telling you that life is precious. These children are my entire world. My husband is my entire world. And I just want to say to anybody who's thinking about an abortion, it is hard to be a parent. There is no doubt. This is not an easy path. But the alternate choice isn't necessarily any easier. You have to live with that moral weight on your soul. The
people who are pro-choice, which is not really choice, it's And again, from the science part, the Gosnell thing has gotten a lot of people's attention as far back as that was. But and then of course the Planned Parenthood selling of baby parts and all of that the mainstream media has tried to shield this group. But there's new stuff coming out all the time. This is horrific, and how part of this you have to win hearts, right?
Yes.
Because if you're comfortable, ripping a human being apart as they, come out of the womb, then there's really no hope for you. No law is going to change that, right? You got to win the hearts.
But it's so right. I mean, it's grisly stuff, but it's wrapped in euphemism. When you hear people talk about it and try to defend what they're doing, they can't quite say the words. Yes, we actually inject these unborn human beings with, poison, and we tear them limb by limb and we put them in the trash. Nobody will say that. They'll use these euphemisms that sound very medical and sanitized. And I think that's why, if you let a woman see the ultrasound, which we have laws now in Alabama that you have to let them see. I mean, if they hear the heartbeat, the human soul kind of kicks in. And for many people, that's the difference.
This bill's going to pass.
It's going to pass, probably.
And the governor's going to sign it. I mean, it's in Alabama, it's going to pass, right? No matter all and again, that's why I don't, right now, I said I don't pay attention to a lot of stuff right now because the sausage making confuses people.
Yes.
And we do that at the federal level, too. We go, hey, the House passed this great law. Well, yeah, but it hadn't gotten to the Senate yet. It hadn't been resolved. So they're telling half stories. And a lot of times we get headlines from Montgomery where, hey, this thing passed. It's going to be. No, it's got to go to the other body and be dealt with as well. Right? That's
right. And there's a few things that might come up that we should talk about that might impact it.
All right. I want to talk about that. And a weird twist to your story. You actually went to school with somebody who killed her baby.
I did. And I mean, again, there's so many people who have been through hard situations.
I want to hear that story, too. I wish we had the hour. We'll have to have you back. Rachel Bryars, Alabama Policy Institute, her personal story having to do with this abortion bill, coming up. Rachel Bryars, senior fellow with the Alabama Policy Institute, an op-ed where, it's hard to write something about yourself, right? I messed up my unplanned pregnancy and why Alabama should pass the pro-life bill. So you were right from the get-go. You weren't going to have an abortion.
I wasn't. I mean, I was notionally pro-life. I just had grown up sort of with that in the background. I never really thought about the argument. That was for somebody else. But then when I faced it, of course, abortion crossed my mind. But I will say that, the strength of that upbringing of being pro-life did sort of carry me through. Now,
your life takes a strange turn because you had your college roommate. Was she a roommate?
She wasn't my roommate. And I went to college with a young woman who I think she was only there for a couple of years, but she played on the soccer team with me.
Okay, so you all played together. Okay.
Yeah. She beautiful young woman, very sunny smile. She always seemed a little sad behind her eyes. You could kind of tell there was a weight on her heart, I could tell. And, years later, I found out why. I was watching Oprah Winfrey, and there she was on TV in a prison inmate's jumpsuit. And Oprah was interviewing her because it came to light later, years after she, I guess, graduated from college, that when she was 15 years old, she had secretly given birth and stabbed and killed her baby. And this was in Ohio. They had searched for who was the person who killed this baby. They called it Baby Hope. But I'll tell you what struck me, Fred, was I just looked at her and I thought, here's Oprah really grilling her about what she did. And I thought, if Jessica had just had an abortion that day, if she had just...
Oprah would have patted her on the back and never interviewed
her. Oh, yeah. She would have been a brave hero if she had just let a doctor stab her baby instead of her. And again, we have to use these grisly terms because that is what it is.
Where do you think this goes? Obviously, this gets... There are lawsuits aplenty after however many states end up doing this. But I sense a tide here. Do you? Where there's a huge change coming. Some of it is, and polls are polls, right? I mean, sometimes you look at them and you go, kind of wonder about the sample sometimes. But consistently, it has been more people are pro-life than pro-choice, or have been for a long time. And that seems to be edging in the direction of pro-life. I think this is going to be an interesting argument. We'll get to the Supreme Court. How long it takes to get there is going to be interesting. But I want to get your thoughts on that and kind of give me a mood of the people you've been talking to at the legislature, because the the people behind this and why they are. I'd like to know a little bit about that. Can you hang on for that?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Rachel Bryars, Alabama Policy Institute. My unplanned pregnancy and why Alabama should pass a pro-abortion, should pass this pro-life bill. What did I just do? Pro-life bill. It's Friday. My brain's tired.
I hear you.
Rachel Bryars has written, was this the hardest op-ed you have ever written?
Absolutely.
Because you're right, it's all about you.
Right.
Right?
I felt like I was
you at
bearing
your
my soul.
worst, right?
Right.
Well, you at your worst and best, because there's a good outcome here.
That's right. And, I think sometimes shame or embarrassment keeps people from sharing the stories that they're supposed to share. And that's how I felt. I thought, this is hard for me to share. Nobody likes to point out the times in their lives when they feel like they failed on some level. And the other piece of that was I didn't want to embarrass my daughter or make her feel like, oh no, Mom, was there ever a time in your life you didn't want me?
You didn't want me, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she's almost 14. We sat down and I just talked to her. And really, it's interesting, this past year I've been talking to her as she gets older about what abortion is, how her life began. And so we went and saw the movie Unplanned together. And I used that as an opportunity to say, this is up in the legislature. I have an opportunity to talk about this as a member of API. Do you want me to share this story? Because, honey, if you don't, I won't. And she didn't bat an eye and just said, tell this story. I'm not embarrassed.
How has this been received? Because, again, for people who don't know, and we should know, there are a lot of people concerned about the legislature gets a lot of influence. But look, they don't have staffs to write all this stuff to help. It's groups like yours that kind of help craft a lot of this, right? And lobbyists, too. I mean, they all kind of have a part in it. Not that the legislators don't put all the pieces together, but I mean, they just don't have the ability to. So how has what you've been doing been received, and what's your sense of the mood? Because, I mean, we've heard some really bizarre stuff, obviously, already.
We have.
What's your sense?
My sense, Fred, is that men in particular are afraid to talk about this issue because they've been so dumped on, I'll just use that word, just to believe that this is only a woman's choice. That if you speak about this and you are a man, you're a terrible human being persecuting women. And I just cannot say enough. Men need to shake that off and just rise up, and they have every right to talk about defending a human being.
I don't know how I came up with this. I may have stolen it from somebody, but it makes sense to me. If you're driving in your car and Scotty's riding with you and he's in the passenger seat, as long as you're driving that car, you're responsible for Scotty's life, right? So if you're a mom, the baby is your passenger that's in your womb. You're responsible for that person because you're the driver. They're the passenger. And when you look at it in those terms, it's not about your body. It's about you're carrying something else and you're responsible for it. And the argument works for me. I don't know if it's convincing anybody.
I like that. I like that. And I think we do have to say there's a particular hardship for women who have to carry babies that they didn't plan on, or maybe in a terrible situation.
And the guy doesn't have to do that.
Right, yeah. Right. I mean, my heart absolutely aches for women who are in situations that have been much harder than mine ever was. You can't look at it and say, oh, they just deal with it. No, this is hard stuff. But you hit on it. That's a person. And so anything after that question, is that a person? Do they have a right to life, which we believe that they do? Those are all second order implications and second order questions. And I think we get distracted by that. And so that's when we hear people say, no, this is a choice. We think, yeah, but what about that person who can't voice that they want to live?
They don't get to have a choice.
They don't get to have a choice.
Well, and we've already muddied the water, right? With this idea, if you kill somebody in an auto accident and they're pregnant, that's 2 murder charges, not 1. We've already muddied the water on this whole issue, right?
Alabama believes that person in the womb is a person.
All right. Rachel, wish we had you for the hour. We'll have to have you in again. People want to read your op-ed. Where do they go?
Go to alabamapolicy.org. They can find my article. And if you want to follow us on Facebook or on Twitter, we are at Alabama Policy. And you can follow me personally on Instagram at Rachel Blackmon Bryars.
All right. Rachel, great seeing you. Have a great weekend.
Thanks so much, Fred. You too.
With 5 kids.
That's right. Lots of baseball going on.